The sky over the 12 nations bruised into a deep, unnatural violet. It was not a storm, but a final, suffocating silence. Before the first frost touched the ground, the temperature plummeted. Then came the white wall. Ancient glaciers, indifferent to the history beneath them, ground down from the peaks with a sound like shattering bone. Marble pillars that had held the weight of millennia groaned and snapped under the relentless pressure. Stone temples, once the pride of the capital, crumbled into dust as the ice surged forward, swallowing the plazas and silencing the city. The seventh Hwan-in stood alone on the highest terrace. He gripped the cold iron railing, his knuckles white, his breath hitching in the freezing air. He watched the horizon disappear. The plazas below, vibrant only hours ago, were now buried under feet of encroaching ice. He reached out, fingers trembling, as if he could push back the tide of frozen earth, but his hand fell limp. The world he had governed was being erased. The seventh Hwan-in turned away from the abyss. His movements were slow, weighted by the collapse of everything he had built. He faced Hwan-ung, his features etched with the exhaustion of an era ending. He reached into his heavy robes and withdrew the chunbu-in. The jade seal pulsed with a faint, rhythmic light, casting a soft glow against the encroaching shadows of the terrace. It was a fragile, defiant spark in the freezing air. He pressed the seal into Hwan-ung's palm, his fingers lingering for a heartbeat. His eyes brimmed with tears that shimmered like falling stardust, reflecting the dying light of the city. "Go," he whispered, his voice cutting through the howl of the wind. "Take the seeds of our memory to the corners of the earth." Hwan-ung closed his hand around the warmth of the jade. He bowed deeply, his forehead touching the cold stone of the terrace, then turned toward the gathering crowd below. The transition was absolute. Hwan-ung stepped toward the stairs. Hwan-ung descended the stairs, the jade seal burning with a steady, rhythmic pulse against his palm. Outside the city gates, the great crossroads had become a churning river of humanity. 3,000 people waited in the biting air. He raised his hand, and the movement rippled through the mass. They split. 4 massive columns formed with military precision. Thousands of torches were ignited at once, their flames flickering like veins of fire against the suffocating darkness of the valley. The first column turned toward the rising sun, their boots crunching in unison. The second marched west, toward the arid plains. The third and fourth split toward the southern jungles and the frozen northern bridge. The rhythmic thud of thousands of feet replaced the howling of the wind. Hwan-ung took the lead of his own group, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The torches swayed in the gale, dipping and rising. Behind them, the city gates groaned as the ice began to press against the stone. They did not look back. Every step was a calculated beat. The blizzard hit with the force of a physical blow. It was not merely snow, it was a wall of white that erased the horizon and turned the world into a spinning void. Hwan-ung pushed forward, his boots sinking deep into drifts that felt like shifting sand. Around him, the masters of wind and rain struggled to keep their footing, their bodies leaning into the gale. Every breath was a sharp intake of frozen air. Ahead, the silhouette of Taebaek-san emerged, a jagged peak glowing with a strange internal warmth that pulsed through the storm. It was their only beacon. Behind them, the destruction was absolute. The golden cities of the 12 khans were being erased. The ice and sand rose like a tide, surging over the markets and the high plazas. Stone walls buckled under the weight of the encroaching frost, and the marble pillars that had defined the capital for millennia shattered into dust. The ground groaned, a deep tectonic sound that vibrated through the soles of their feet as the earth itself seemed to pull the city down into the abyss. Hwan-ung did not look back. He kept his eyes locked on the mountain, his hand gripping the jade seal until his knuckles turned white. They moved through the blinding whiteout, toward the light. The last of the city vanished beneath the shifting tide of ice. A single stone pillar remained, its intricate carvings catching the pale, dying light for one final moment. It stood defiant against the crushing weight of the glaciers, a solitary finger of history pointing toward a sky that had forgotten its name. Then, the earth groaned. The ground beneath the pillar fractured, and with a sound like grinding teeth, it tilted and slid into the abyss. The ice closed over the gap, smooth and indifferent. The wind howled through the empty frozen valley, carrying only the hollow echo of a civilization that had ceased to be. There were no more voices, no more movement, just the vast, white silence of a world reclaimed by the frost. What had once been a kingdom of gold and marble was now nothing more than a myth, pressed deep beneath the frozen crust of the earth, waiting for an eternity that would never end.